AITA for keeping the rights to a system my brother took credit for? My name is Logan. I'm 34, and I've spent the last 11 years working inside my family's commercial refrigeration business in Central Ohio, which is a boring way of saying I know exactly how to keep restaurants from losing $10,000 in inventory overnight. I handle systems, vendor schedules, warranty claims, technician routes, and the ugly spreadsheet stuff nobody wants to touch until it saves their day. My older brother Derek has always been the face of the company, mostly because my parents think confidence is the same thing as competence. I'm the one who drinks gas station coffee at 5:40 in the morning while answering emergency calls from deli owners. And Derek is the one who shows up at 10 a.m. with sunglasses on and somehow gets thanked for leadership. The applause happened in a conference room above a grocery chain's regional office outside Columbus. The room smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase markers, and Derek stood at the front with his sleeves rolled up like he'd been digging trenches instead of clicking through slides I had made. I built this around one simple idea, he said, smiling at the grocery executives. No customer should have to call us twice for the same problem. I stared at the laptop in front of me. I had written that exact sentence at my kitchen table at 1:13 in the morning while eating cold pizza over a parts invoice. I remembered because the cheese had gone stiff, and my phone kept buzzing with photos from one of our techs crouched behind a reach-in cooler in a sandwich shop, asking whether a certain board was still under warranty. Derek said it like it had come to him in a flash of executive wisdom. My dad, Frank, sat 2 chairs down from me, looking at Derek the way he used to look at Little League trophies. My mom, Linda, had come along even though she didn't officially work in operations. She handled relationships, which mostly meant smoothing over Derek's mistakes and reminding everyone that family came first whenever family was about to cost me something. At the end of Derek's presentation, Graham Lee, the grocery chain's regional facilities director, leaned back and tapped his pen against his notebook. Who designed the warranty flagging logic? He asked. Derek didn't even blink. That was part of my modernization push. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. The little plastic tab on the lid had snapped halfway off earlier that morning, and it pressed into my thumb. Graham glanced at me. It was quick, but I caught it. I had been introduced as our operations guy, which in my family meant useful enough to bring along, not important enough to name correctly. Derek kept talking. We wanted the system to think like a technician, but report like management. Another one of my lines. Dad grinned. That's my boy. Always thinking ahead. People clapped. Not wildly, not like a movie, just polite business applause around a polished table. Somehow that made it worse. It wasn't dramatic enough for me to react. It was just enough to bury me quietly. Mom reached over and squeezed my shoulder. To anyone else, it probably looked affectionate. To me, it felt like a warning. Our company was called Miller Refrigeration, after my grandfather, who started it with one van, a toolbox, and the ability to fix anything that hummed, leaked, froze, or smoked. By the time I was old enough to sweep the shop floor, the business had moved into a squat brick warehouse with 3 service vans, a parts cage that always smelled like cardboard and machine oil, and a break room microwave that hadn't spun correctly since 2016. There were old calendars on the walls, vendor magnets on every filing cabinet, and parts catalogs stacked beside a printer loud enough to sound angry. We serviced restaurants, cafeterias, gas stations, small markets, and a few local grocery stores. Nothing glamorous. Just the kind of work nobody thinks about until a walk-in freezer dies on the hottest Friday in July. In our family, Derek had ideas. I had responsibilities. Somehow his ideas always needed my responsibilities to become real. Dad ran the company like every problem could be solved by pride and a handshake. Mom protected the family image like it was a 4th child. Derek charmed customers, posted business advice on LinkedIn, and used phrases like scaling service capacity when he couldn't find a part number. I handled the route maps, warranty disputes, inventory lists, technician schedules, vendor back orders, QuickBooks errors, and the calls that started with someone telling me it was late, but everything was thawing. I lived in a modest apartment above an old dentist's office near a row of local shops. My work boots stayed by the door, invoices covered my kitchen table, and my phone never really stopped buzzing. For years, I told myself I wasn't invisible. I was dependable. There's a difference, or at least I wanted there to be. The business had been slipping for a while. Missed service calls, Duplicate trips. Parts ordered twice and still arriving late. Warranty credits we should have claimed but didn't because nobody could find the original installation date. Technicians texting blurry photos of equipment tags from cramped restaurant kitchens, asking if I had a model number on a prep cooler from March. Usually I did. One night, after a diner owner nearly cried on the phone because her sandwich prep cooler had failed for the third time in 2 months, I started building the system. At first, it was just a way to track equipment history better than a whiteboard and 6 half-broken binders. Then I added warranty flags, parts compatibility, customer priority levels, after-hours response tracking, route logic, and a dashboard that showed which service calls were likely repeat failures. It was not fancy in the Silicon Valley sense. Nobody was going to call it disruptive. It was ugly in places and practical everywhere. It knew that a dead walk-in freezer behind a barbecue restaurant mattered more than a noisy display case in a lobby. It knew which technician had the right certification, which van had the right parts, and whether a failure might still be covered under warranty. The first time it saved real money, it was for a restaurant in Newark. One of our techs, Marcus, texted me a photo of a greasy model plate from behind a prep cooler. He asked if I had anything on it from March. I replied that I had already pulled it. The warranty was active until July, and he shouldn't let them sell him a new board. He texted back and called me a beautiful, boring man. That one flag saved the customer about $2,200 and saved us from eating the cost of a return trip. After that, the techs started using it without being told. They didn't care who built it. They cared that when they were standing in a puddle behind a fryer with a manager breathing down their neck, the answer was there. Derek noticed the dashboard during a panic call from a small market. Their dairy case had gone warm on a Saturday morning, and I had the whole service history up before Derek finished saying we needed to project confidence. He stood behind my chair, smelling like expensive cologne and wintergreen gum. "What is that?" he asked. "The thing that keeps us from looking incompetent." He laughed like I'd made a joke for him. "Can I get access?" "For what?" "The grocery proposal." Graham's people asked about response time, documentation, all that boring stuff. "This looks good." "It doesn't just look good. It works." "Relax," Derek said, clapping me on the back. "I'm not stealing your little spreadsheet." "It's not a spreadsheet." "Exactly. That's why clients will love it." I should have said no right there. I should have locked it down, made a formal ownership record, sent emails with words like license and authorization. Instead, I gave him limited access to the presentation dashboard because we were chasing the biggest contract we had ever had, and I still believed there was a line my family wouldn't cross. That was my mistake. Not trusting them once. Trusting them after they had trained me for years not to trust what I was seeing. The grocery chain contract could have changed everything. They had stores across the region, and they were unhappy with their current refrigeration vendor. For us, it meant steady work, better cash flow, and the kind of credibility Dad had wanted for years. For Derek, it meant a stage. He loved stages. At the proposal meeting, he wore a navy jacket and used a clicker he had bought the day before. I sat near the wall with my laptop in case technical backup was needed. Mom sat beside Dad with her hands folded like we were at church. Derek opened with a story about a customer whose freezer failed overnight. He changed a few details, but I recognized the case. I had handled that call. I had pulled the warranty record. I had rerouted Marcus and saved the inventory. Derek said that the situation showed him we needed a better operational backbone. I watched the cursor blink on my laptop screen and felt something inside me go very still. He walked through the dashboard. My routing logic became his routing logic. My warranty flagging became our leadership approach. He didn't know enough to explain the mechanics, but he knew how to sound close enough if nobody pushed him. Graham pushed a little. "Walk me through how the system distinguishes between a compressor failure trend and a thermostat issue being reported badly by store staff." Derek smiled. "Great question. It's a combination of technician feedback and data normalization." Graham waited. Derek added that the important thing was we weren't just reacting, we were anticipating. It was a polished dodge. Graham knew it. Dad either didn't know or didn't care. When the meeting ended, Graham shook Derek's hand. "Interesting system. We'll have more technical questions during final review." "Looking forward to it," Derek said. Dad slapped him on the shoulder hard enough to make him rock forward. "That's why he's the future of this place." Mom looked at me and smiled too softly. "See? This is good for all of us." I didn't answer. My throat felt tight. and I knew if I spoke in that moment, they would make my tone the problem. That Sunday, we had dinner at my parents' house. Sunday dinners in our family were never just dinners. They were staff meetings with mashed potatoes. Mom made pot roast, carrots, and the kind of rolls Derek loved. Dad sat at the head of the table, already talking about the grocery contract like it had been awarded. Derek drank a beer and grinned at his phone. Graham emailed. Final review next week. Linder wants to sit in too. Good, Dad said. They need to see we're ready to expand. I put down my fork. He told them he built it. Derek sighed. Don't make this weird. You said you designed the system. I presented the system. That's not what you said. Mom reached for the serving spoon, like normal movement could calm the room. Logan, he told them what they needed to hear. I looked at her. That's not the same thing. Dad leaned back. Clients want a strong leader. They don't want the guy behind the screen mumbling about columns and filters. I'm not asking to lead the sales pitch. I'm asking you not to lie about who built the thing you're selling. Derek set his beer down. Clients don't care who typed what. They care who can sell it. I almost laughed. Typed what? Mom's eyes sharpened. Don't do that. Do what? Act like Derek didn't contribute. He didn't know the warranty flags existed until 3 weeks ago. Dad slapped his palm on the table, not loud enough to be violent, just loud enough to remind everyone whose house it was. You want applause, or do you want this family to survive? There it was. The old lever. Family survival. Grandpa's legacy. Payroll. Technicians. Customers. Every real responsibility stacked up and shoved toward me until my own work became something I was selfish for naming. I want honesty, I said. Mom's mouth tightened. I just don't understand why you'd punish all of us over credit. I looked at Derek. He looked away. After dinner, Dad asked me to step into his home office. It was really just a spare bedroom with a heavy desk, a filing cabinet, and framed photos of him and Derek at trade shows. There was one photo of me on the wall too, from a charity golf event where I had been asked to hold the raffle tickets. Dad pulled a folder from his drawer and slid a contract across the desk. Sign this. I didn't touch it. What is it? Housekeeping. Housekeeping doesn't usually need my signature at 8:30 on a Sunday. Mom stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. Derek hovered behind her, suddenly fascinated by the hallway floor. Dad tapped the top page. It just clarifies that anything developed for company operations belongs to the company. We need clean paperwork before final review. I read the first paragraph. My name was spelled correctly, which bothered me more than it should have. There were clauses about prior contributions, derivative systems, assignment of rights, and project leadership. Derek was named as lead for implementation and client delivery. The company would own the system outright. I would receive a one-time bonus at Dad's discretion. At his discretion. How much is the bonus? I asked. Dad frowned. That's not the point. It is if you're buying my work. Mom exhaled like I had disappointed her. You always make simple things difficult. I flipped another page. The language was broad. Too broad. It didn't just cover the dashboard I had shown Derek. It covered documentation, logic, procedures, data structures, training materials, anything created before or after signing. This would give Derek ownership of my work. Dad's face reddened. It gives the company what it needs. The company didn't build it. I did. Your grandfather didn't build this place so his grandsons could fight over a computer program. It's not a computer program when Derek presents it. Then it's the future of the company. Derek finally spoke. I was going to mention you. I looked at him. When? At the right time. The right time was when Graham asked who designed the warranty logic. He lifted both hands. I didn't want to derail the meeting. Dad pushed a pen toward me. Sign it. We'll talk about money later. That was the moment I got scared. Not angry. Scared. Because the contract wasn't sloppy. Someone had thought about it. Someone had decided my silence was likely enough to build paperwork around it. I capped the pen without using it and set it down. I'm taking this home to review. Dad's jaw tightened. No. You sign it here. Then I'm definitely not signing it. Mom's voice dropped. Logan. I stood up, folder in hand. I'm not refusing to help. I'm refusing to be erased. Nobody chased me out. That told me more than yelling would have. The next morning, the warehouse felt normal in the way places do right before something breaks. The printer screamed through invoices. The parts cage door stuck. Marcus complained that someone had put the wrong filter dryers in his van. A customer called twice before 8:15 a.m. because their reach-in was making a terrible noise. I was at my desk correcting a QuickBooks entry when Tessa stopped by the copier. Tessa was my cousin and our unofficial bookkeeper, which meant she did official bookkeeping work for unofficial pay. She was 34, careful with her words, and allergic to family drama. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "Don't sign anything." I looked up. She kept sorting papers. "I'm not brave enough to say this twice, so please listen the first time." "Tess, what happened?" She glanced toward Dad's office. "Check the expansion folder." "What expansion folder?" "The one on the shared drive Derek thinks only he and Frank use." She slipped a sticky note under the edge of my keyboard. "Page 14. The note said to check the expansion packet. Page 14. "Tessa, I'm not saying I saw anything." Her voice was barely above the copier hum. "I'm saying don't sign blind." Then she walked away with a stack of invoices against her chest like a shield. I waited until after lunch, when Dad left to meet a vendor and Derek took a long call in his truck. I opened the shared drive. The folder wasn't hidden well. It was named Expansion Financing Grocery Award. Inside were scanned PDFs, revised PDFs, and signed drafts, and one file labeled as final for lender use. My hands went cold before I even opened it. The packet described a plan to lease another van, hire 2 technicians, expand service capacity, and use the grocery chain contract as projected revenue. It listed Derek as operations director, Dad as owner, Mom as administrative officer. Then I saw my name. Technical partner. Not employee. Not support. Partner. My name appeared in the section describing delivery risk. According to the packet, I had committed to implementation, training, system maintenance, and technical oversight. The lender notes said my involvement was essential to performance. I scrolled to page 14. There was my signature. It was mine. I knew the shape of it, the too high L, the way the final stroke cut under the name. But it was attached to a document I had never seen. Above it was language acknowledging participation in the expansion plan and acceptance of technical delivery obligations. For a few seconds I just stared. It is a strange thing to recognize your own signature and know immediately that it is misrepresenting reality. I downloaded nothing to a personal drive. I printed nothing. I took photos of the screen with timestamps visible, then used the company scanner log to confirm when the PDF had been created. It was messy, sloppy. The signature page had clearly been scanned separately. The resolution was different. The initials on earlier pages didn't match mine because there were no initials, just typed placeholders. The metadata had an old file name embedded in it showing it was an employment agreement scan from 2018. That was when I remembered signing updated employment paperwork years earlier after Dad changed insurance providers. In the same folder, there was an email thread between Derek and Dad. Short, ordinary, entitled enough to ruin everything. Derek wrote that the lender wanted my commitment page. Dad replied to use the old signature page for the draft and said a clean copy would follow after the award. Derek mentioned I would fight it. Dad assured him that Mom would talk me down. Another email from Mom to Dad said that once the contract was awarded, I would come around because I always did when the company needed me. I sat there until the motion sensor lights in the hallway clicked off. Then I forwarded nothing, deleted nothing, changed nothing. I closed the folder and wrote down every file name, every timestamp, every person with access. My hands were shaking, but my head was clear in a way it hadn't been in years. They hadn't just taken credit. They had used my name as a seatbelt for their bad driving. That night, Derek texted the sibling group chat, even though it was just the 2 of us. He said the final review was next Thursday, told me to keep things positive, and asked me to send him a cheat sheet on warranty logic. I looked at the messages while standing in my tiny kitchen, still wearing my work shirt, boots untied by the door. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator humming like it knew too much. I typed, erased, typed again. I replied that project questions should go through the shared ticket channel, so answers would remain documented. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. He asked if I was serious. I said yes. He called. I let it ring. Then Dad called. I let that ring too. The next morning, I called Nora Blake. She was an employment and small business attorney a restaurant owner had once recommended after a contract dispute. Her office was in a plain building with a parking lot full of potholes and a waiting room that smelled faintly like toner. She had calm eyes, a yellow legal pad, and no interest in making me feel dramatic. I handed her a timeline, screenshots, the unsigned contract, and my notes from the shared drive. She read for a long time without saying much. Finally, she leaned back. Do not yell. Do not threaten. Do not delete a thing. I wasn't going to. Good. People like this count on you getting emotional so they can make your reaction the story. That landed harder than I expected. She tapped the contract Dad had tried to make me sign. This is broad. Too broad. And this financing packet is a serious situation. A legal problem? A very serious one. If it was submitted in this form and represented as authorized, they'll say it was a draft. They might. That's why documentation matters. She wrote something on her pad. From now on, written communication only on anything related to the system, the grocery contract, financing, your role, or intellectual property. No hallway explanations. No phone calls unless Ohio law and the circumstances allow recording. And even then we discuss it first. You do your job. You do not interfere with operations. You do not rescue them off the record. I don't want to destroy the company. Nora looked at me over her glasses. Then don't. Protecting yourself is not destruction. I stared at the edge of her desk. She softened a little. Silence is not the same as consent, Logan. But if you keep saving them quietly while they represent you as committed, they will use your helpfulness as evidence. That was the first time I understood how my best trait had become their favorite tool. So I changed how I worked. Not loudly. Not with a resignation letter slammed on a desk. I showed up on time. I handled active service calls. I answered technicians. I documented warranty claims. I kept customers from losing inventory. I did not delete code, remove data, block access, or break anything. I simply stopped doing unpaid magic. When Derek texted late at night asking what the red warranty flag meant, I did not answer from bed like I usually would. At 8:07 the next morning, I replied by email. I told him to submit project questions through the shared ticket channel so answers remained documented, and I noted I would respond during business hours. He walked into my office 20 minutes later. What is the meaning of this? I kept my eyes on the service route map. An email. Don't be cute. I'm not. We're on the same team. Then the team can use the same process. Derek lowered his voice. You're going to make me look stupid in front of Graham. I looked up. I'm not making you do anything. His face twitched. For the first time, I saw the fear under the confidence. Derek wasn't clueless because he was lazy, not entirely. He was clueless because for years he had never needed to know where the floor was. Someone always put a rug over the hole. Dad called me into his office that afternoon. The old photo of Grandpa hung behind him, crooked by maybe half an inch. It had been crooked for months. I used to straighten it. I hadn't lately. Just give your brother the answers, Dad said. If he is the project lead, he should know the project. Dad's mouth flattened. This attitude is exactly what I was worried about. What attitude? Punishing the family because your feelings got hurt. I took a slow breath. This isn't about feelings. It's about paperwork. His eyes changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. What paperwork? The expansion packet. He leaned back too fast. You shouldn't be digging through financing documents. My name is in them. That's because you're part of this company. My signature is in them. The office went quiet except for the printer outside grinding through something it probably shouldn't have been printing. Dad stood. Watch yourself. I am. Mom came in later with a paper plate of cookies, which was how she apologized without apologizing and pressured without seeming to. She set them on my desk. Honey, I know you're upset. I didn't take a cookie. I'm concerned. You're scaring your father. He put my name in a lender packet. She closed the door. We were trying to save the company. No, you were trying to save Derek from being seen. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry yet. Mom saved tears for witnesses. I don't know when you became so hard, she said. I almost answered. I almost said that maybe it happened around the time my family used my signature without permission for a loan. But Nora's voice was in my head. Written communication. Documentation. Do not let emotion become the story. I'll send my concerns by email, I said. Mom stared at me like I had slapped her. Then she picked up the plate of cookies and left. By the time the final client review arrived, Derek was cracking in small, visible ways. During internal prep, he mixed up compressor failure patterns with thermostat calibration issues. He called parts compatibility scoring, which was not wrong exactly, just meaningless in the way people sound, when they hope rhythm will replace knowledge. He asked Marcus in front of everyone whether a TXV was the compressor valve thing, and Marcus stared at him for so long I had to look down. The family group chat became a performance space. Derek reminded everyone to keep it professional. Dad said we were all pulling in the same direction. Mom said family came first. Then Derek texted me privately. He asked me to send him the top 5 questions Graham might ask, told me not to be petty, and claimed he was always going to make sure I got credit after we landed the deal. I replied the next morning from my desk. I stated I was available to answer properly assigned technical questions in writing, but I would not provide off-the-record coaching for representations I did not authorize. He didn't respond. Nora had already sent letters. One to the company, one to the lender, carefully worded. No accusations beyond what the documents supported. My client disputes the assignment of intellectual property. My client disputes authorization for use of his signature and name in any financing representation. Preserve all documents. Direct communications through counsel. Dad stormed into my office after receiving his copy. You hired a lawyer? Yes. Against your own family? To protect my own name. He pointed a finger at me. Your grandfather would be ashamed. I looked past him at the shop floor, where Marcus was loading parts into a van and Tessa was pretending not to listen from the filing cabinet. Grandpa put his name on work he actually did, I said. Dad's face went dark. You watch your mouth. I have been. The final review was held on a video call from our conference room, which was really a converted office with a long table, mismatched chairs, and a whiteboard that still had last month's route notes ghosted across it. Graham joined from the grocery chain office. 2 other facilities managers appeared in small boxes. A lender representative joined with her camera on, expression neutral. Nora joined from her office, calm as a stone. Derek sat at the head of the table. Dad sat beside him. Mom sat behind Dad, not officially part of the meeting, but present enough to apply pressure. I sat near the side with my laptop closed. Derek started strong. He always did. He thanked everyone, talked about readiness, scalability, documentation, and customer-first service. He clicked through revised slides. My slides, edited badly. One chart title had been changed from repeat failure risk to predictive failure intelligence, which sounded like something a software company would sell to a hotel chain and then never support. Graham listened without expression. Walk me through how the system prioritizes a walk-in freezer failure versus a display case failure. It uses urgency metrics, Derek said. Which ones? The standard ones. Graham looked down at his notes. Define standard. Derek shifted. Temperature sensitivity, customer impact, service level factors. Okay. If 2 calls come in at the same time, one for a deli case holding prepared foods at 48 degrees and one for an ice cream walk-in at 18 degrees, which one gets the first available technician? Derek looked at the screen, then at Dad. Dad looked at me. I did nothing. Derek cleared his throat. It depends on the full context. Graham nodded. What context? The system weighs all that. How? Derek's smile thinned. The algorithm handles it. The lender representative began taking notes. Graham turned his attention slightly. Logan, you've been quiet. Can you answer that? Before I could speak, Dad jumped in. Logan can explain the technical details. Derek oversees the whole thing. Nora's eyes moved to me on the screen. I can answer, I said. But I need to be clear about the capacity I'm answering in. Derek muttered for me not to do this. Graham's expression did not change. Go ahead. I can answer as the system's creator, I said, keeping my voice even. I can't answer as Derek's technical support, and I can't answer as a consenting partner to the expansion loan, because there is an unresolved legal issue involving unauthorized use of my name, signature, and work. The room went silent, so completely I could hear the vending machine humming through the wall. Mom's phone moved in her lap. A second later, my phone lit up with a text from her telling me to stop. I didn't look at it again. Nora spoke next. My client disputes both the assignment of intellectual property and the representation that he approved participation in the financing packet. Notice has been sent to the lender, and we are requesting preservation of all versions of the relevant documents. The lender representative looked directly into her camera. Frank, we'll need to pause approval pending review. Dad's face changed before he found words. It was not guilt. Not yet. It was calculation failing. Now hold on, he said. This is a family matter being blown out of proportion. Graham's voice stayed calm. It became a business matter when it entered the proposal and financing structure. Derek turned toward me. Are you serious right now? Yes. We're about to lose everything. No, I said. You're about to lose what you tried to get using my name. His face reddened. You could have handled this privately. I tried. You handed me a contract and told me to sign it before I embarrassed everyone. Mom made a small wounded sound behind Dad. Graham raised a hand slightly. We're going to pause here. Until ownership, authorization, and delivery responsibility are clear, we can't proceed. The call ended in pieces. The lender left first, then the grocery managers. Graham stayed a moment longer. Logan, he said, for what it's worth, I'm less interested in who presents a system and more interested in who can explain it. Then he disconnected. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Dad stood so fast his chair hit the wall. He demanded I go to his office. The argument happened under fluorescent lights in the warehouse office with Grandpa's crooked photo on the wall and the smell of cardboard and oil coming through the vents. Derek paced. Mom cried exactly the way I knew she would once there were no outsiders left to impress. Dad stood behind his desk like it was a bench, and he was the judge. You humiliated this family, Dad said. I told the truth in a room where my name was already being used. You cost us the contract. Derek cost you the contract when he claimed he could deliver something he didn't understand. Derek stopped pacing. I understand enough. I looked at him. What does a red warning flag mean? His mouth opened. Closed. I nodded once. That's what I thought. Mom wiped her eyes with a tissue. You enjoyed that. No. You did. You sat there waiting for him to fail. I sat there waiting for one of you to tell the truth. Dad slammed the folder onto the desk. We did what we had to do. You reused my signature page. It was a draft. It went to a lender. We needed them to know you were involved. I wasn't involved in the expansion loan. You would have been, Mom said. Once things settled down. I stared at her. You don't get to decide my consent retroactively. That sentence landed. Maybe not in her conscience, but in the room. Even Derek looked away. Dad lowered his voice. You think you can walk away clean? This company paid you for years. This company paid me wages for work. It didn't buy my name. Family doesn't do this. I felt tired then. Not weak. Just done. No, I said. Family doesn't do what you did and then call the consequences betrayal. Dad pointed to the door. Get out. I'll finish today's open service documentation. Then I'll communicate through Nora. Mom cried harder. Derek called me cold. Dad called me disloyal. I went back to my desk and finished routing 2 emergency calls because customers still had food thawing in coolers and Marcus still needed a part number. That was the worst part. Even after everything, the work was still real. The fallout wasn't instant, but it was steady. The grocery chain paused, then moved on. Graham didn't make a scene. He didn't need to. Reliability mattered to him, and we had just shown him a room full of fog. The lender demanded corrected documents and a written explanation. Dad had to disclose that my authorization was disputed. The expansion approval froze and never thawed. Vendor terms tightened because rumors travel fast in small industries. One van was sold. The job posting for 2 new technicians disappeared. Derek's title as project lead became meaningless because there was no project to lead. He stopped posting leadership quotes online for a while, which Marcus said was the closest thing to peace the shop had seen in years. Tessa resigned 2 weeks later. She left a typed notice on Dad's desk and took a bookkeeping job with a plumbing contractor across town. On her last day, she found me by the parts cage. I should have said something earlier, she said. I was counting fan motors and trying not to think about how empty the warehouse already felt. You said enough when it mattered. She nodded, eyes wet. I couldn't afford to be brave. I know. No, you don't. She gave a small laugh. But thanks for saying it. After she left, Mom tried to control the family version. She told relatives I had blindsided everyone because I was jealous of Derek. For about a week, that worked. Then pieces of the story got around. Not all of it. Enough. The phrase signature page did damage her tears couldn't fix. One aunt called me and said she didn't want details, but was sorry. That was more than I got from my parents. Nora handled the settlement. She was careful and unsentimental. You can push for a hostile legal battle, she told me, sitting across from me with her yellow legal pad again. Or you can fight for a clean exit. I want my name back, I said. That's enough. It wasn't only my name, of course. The settlement included payment for unauthorized use of my system in proposals and financing materials, removal of my name from the loan file, written acknowledgement that I had not approved the expansion financing, and terms preventing the company from using my system going forward without a license. I didn't take everything I could have tried to take. I also didn't leave empty-handed just to prove I was nice. That was new for me. Dad signed because Nora made the alternatives clear. Mom didn't attend. Derek sent one text the night before everything was finalized. He said he hoped it was worth it. I stared at it for a while. Then I replied that it was mine. He didn't answer. A month after the grocery deal collapsed, I got an email from Graham. The subject line was plain, Operations Consulting. He wrote that he was reaching out directly because he valued people who understood the system they were selling. He mentioned they were reviewing their refrigeration service documentation process internally and might have a limited consulting need. He added that if I was available under my own business name, he would be open to a conversation. There was no sentimental praise, just a professional email from a man who had watched me tell the truth calmly under pressure and decided that mattered. I printed it and set it on my kitchen table beside a cup of gas station coffee. Same paper cup, same broken little plastic tab. Different morning. I formed a small consulting business with a boring name and a clean contract template Nora reviewed twice. My first job was not glamorous. I helped Graham's team map equipment records across stores, clean up warranty tracking, and design response categories that actual technicians could use without getting frustrated with a tablet in a freezer aisle. I worked from my apartment, then from a rented desk in a shared office above a bakery that made the hallway smell like cinnamon by 7 a.m. For the first time in years, my phone did not buzz all night unless someone was paying me to be available. The last time I went to the warehouse, it was after hours. I still had a key, and I didn't want a scene. The building was dark except for the vending machine light in the hallway and the security glow over the parts cage. It smelled the same as always: cardboard, machine oil, dust, and old coffee. I walked through slowly, past the whiteboard with half-erased routes, past the break room microwave that still turned halfway and gave up, past the vendor magnets and the parts catalogs and the printer that had made every invoice sound like an argument. Dad's office door was open. I stood there for a minute. For years, I had thought leaving would feel like losing my family. Instead, it felt like finally telling the truth with my feet. I set the warehouse key on Dad's desk. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to explain to people who had understood me just fine when they needed me. I paused by Grandpa's photo on the way out and straightened it. Then I turned off the light. The company survived, smaller and quieter. Dad hired outside help for operations and paid more than he ever wanted to admit my work had been worth. Mom and I settled into limited contact, mostly holiday texts with careful punctuation. Derek stayed at the company, but the shine came off. Customers still liked him, some of them, but charm didn't carry the same weight after the grocery deal. He had to ask technicians questions in public now. They answered him, but nobody pretended. I didn't get the big apology people expect in stories like this. Dad never sat me down and said he was wrong. Mom never admitted she knew exactly what she was doing. Derek never confessed that he had been scared. Maybe they admitted pieces of it to themselves. Maybe they didn't. What I got was better than a speech. I got legal protection. I got paid for work done under my own name. I got mornings where I could drink coffee while it was hot. I got Sunday dinners that were just dinner because I stopped going to the ones that doubled as unpaid staff meetings. I got to build systems for people who didn't need me invisible in order to feel important. For years, I thought being the quiet one meant being mature. Now I know silence only looks noble to the people benefiting from it. I'm still practical. I still know which failures are urgent and which ones can wait until morning. I still care about doing the job right. But I don't hand people my name just because they call themselves family. Not anymore. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.